Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beer and Money. My name is Ryan Burklo.
And I'm Alex Collins.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the second part of our series around how to prioritize your financial plan or your finances. Specifically, today, we're going to dive into the priorities around your financial plan. But before we dive into that, Mr. Collins, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a head full of dynamite. So it's a new hazy IPA from Fremont. Fremont Brewing is a local brewery here to Seattle. It caught my attention because it's a hazy IPA.
Well, and I like the name already, so I've never had that one, so I'm curious what you think of that one. So
Yeah, I like it. Go ahead.
I was going to say I was at Remlinger Farms, and a name caught my attention, it was the name of the beer is called Westies with the
Ooh.
Besties.
Oh, nice! I like it.
So, I'm channeling my inner 17-year-old daughter here, and talking about my BFFs. But anyways, it's a Westy IPA. It's actually rather light, and especially for hot weather, it's actually rather money. So that's it's a beer I'm got going on.
What does that clock in at, Ryan? Do you know?
6.6.
So this is a 6.8. This is super smooth. This would be it's great for a day like today, which is like nice and hot.
Awesome. So check them out. Those are both Pacific Northwest breweries. One's in Fremont, which I think a lot of people have heard of. Rumlinger Farms, I don't think not as much. It's in the big city, the metropolis of Place in Washington.
Not a metropolis. It's a great little farming community. It's a wonderful place. And if you haven't been out to Remlinger Farms, highly recommend it. It's kind of a cool little place to just go visit, especially in the fall.
That, and you've got, I remember taking my kids there when they were younger. They've got kind of a pseudo amusement park in the back with some rides and hay rides and pony rides and all that kind of fun stuff. So
kind of some mini roller coasters and
there's a free advertisement for Rumlinger Farms. You're welcome. So, well, let's dive into today's episode, right? So, in the last episode, Alex, we were talking about prioritization, and specifically we were diving into kind of the domains of a balance sheet, or what we would consider a balance sheet. So let me share my screen here. So make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, because today's, I think, episode will definitely be helpful on the visual side of stuff. But in the last episode, we talked about, look, the way that we look at planning in general is everything is around cash flow or the income, whether or not that's in the pre-retirement stage, because that's where the income's coming in the door and we're deciding where to put it, or the retirement stage when our assets turn into income and hopefully the assets turn on the income stream high enough so that we can have the same lifestyle that we're accustomed to.
Well, and that's the trick right there, right? Everyone thinks of building the assets to a number, and it has very little to do with what number you build it to. It's all about how you're positioned to be able to create an income. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the location of where your money is on the balance sheet will create different distribution options or opportunities or strategies. It's this aha moment when we see in clients, when they get to the point of understanding, oh yeah, the whole point of saving is to create cash flow later. And so it really does a good job of actually connecting the two sides of the industry. And it makes it so that when we talk about doing holistic financial planning, and we're talking about the entire picture and saying, no, look, we need to go ahead and protect our todays and create cash flow for tomorrow. And those are really two sides of the same coin. Most people are like, oh, okay, now I get why we need to do both of these things and why it's important to look at how anything we do from a financial standpoint impacts all the other things on our balance sheet.
So our philosophy is everything really kind of ends and lands in that cash flow / income arena. And if that's the case, it's either income coming in the door from a job or our business, or income coming from our other assets if we don't have a business. If that's the case, shouldn't we protect the very resource that we want so we can live our life? And of course, that's a stupid question. The answer to that question is, at least we've never heard the answer no to that question, right? The answer is always yes. There has been some questions around, well, when I get to retirement, what do I need? And our question always back to them is, well, at that point, we're protecting our assets, but really we're still protecting our income. So again, how much of your income do you want protected? And of course, it goes back to, well, all of it. So that's where the protection piece comes in the door. Alex has already alluded to the assets and where our money is being saved. And then, of course, we've got the liabilities, right? The debts that we have on the balance sheet, including taxes either today or taxes that will be owed in the future. How do we do all that? And again, everything is kind of decided down here in that cash flow arena.
Yeah. So explicitly, here's what we're going to go through today. 1, protecting your todays. 2, how much you should save, and we'll talk about savings rate versus rate of return and how to think about those things. 3rd is going to be where to save it, or the location. And then 4th is going to be talking about debts versus income. Because oftentimes we did a podcast on this not that long ago, but the conversation around oh, should I pay off my debts at retirement? Maybe. What is it that we're trying to do? And we'll give you kind of some easy ways to dig into that conversation.
So let's dive into this out. So again, I don't think we need to go too deep here, but we've already stated it, right? The income coming in the door is our most valuable resource. It allows us to live the life that we want. So we've got to protect it, obviously, pre-retirement, because if that stops coming in the door, even gets, for our listeners, okay? Yes, the chances of you losing your income forever is low. It's greater than 0%, but it is low. Imagine if you lost 10, 15, or 20% of your income. How would that affect what you're wanting? And of course, we always get the answer to that is, well, it would affect me quite a bit. So this is why we have to protect the income, not only in or pre-retirement, but also in retirement.
Well, and I mean, Ryan, over the weekend, we had 2 clients that went through fairly significant issues. One of them lost about 50% of their income temporarily. The other one lost 100% of their income permanently. And for security reasons and whatnot, we're not going to go into the details on the podcast, but that is a big issue, and we need to make sure that we're addressing those things. Now, thankfully, we have really good planning done for all of these clients, and they were proactive and reached out to us as soon as issues occurred. We're going to get them taken care of, and they're going to be way better off from having worked with us because we've done proactive planning for them.
And our whole mission on the protection of income is we protect from the worst threats. Threat number 1 is lawsuit, right? If someone sues you, not only can they come after your assets, in the state of Washington, they can come after your income. If you were to get sick or injured and couldn't go to work anymore, not only do we have higher medical bills, our income gets hit, and even in retirement, now we transition into long-term care possibilities. Now we're depleting our assets possibly. It's still the same problem, just a different stage of life.
Well, and ultimately, the older you are, the bigger the medical bills get.
Yep.
Whether it's dental, vision, healthcare, having somebody come help out with the daily activities of living, any of these things, the older you are, the bigger the bill.
Yep. And then we've got a premature death, right? Either in our working years where our income stops coming in the door, and even in retirement, our income stops coming in the door, right? So take my wife and I, if I pass away, my wife will lose one of our Social Security paychecks. She gets the higher of the 2, but the other one goes away.
Uh-huh.
Right? That's one piece. The other piece is how did I die? right? Maybe I had cancer and we were spending a bunch of money on the medical bills. Like, we don't know, which is why the life insurance piece in our philosophy doesn't necessarily go away. Because let's just face it, this is horrible for me to say, Alex, but the fact of the matter is we're getting closer to death, not further away from it.
Well, every day we're getting closer to it,
right?
like just
So
as a matter of fact.
why not just protect that piece? And we're not, it changes throughout life. This isn't a carte blanche statement. It changes throughout life, but it's not something to forget.
Right. Well, and like if we have a pension or if we created a personal pension, that's also something that can potentially go away, either partially or fully, at the death of the spouse that is receiving the income. Again, whether it's a personal pension or whether it's a pension through work. And so like this type of work needs to be looked at and studied. We don't care what the answers are. Like our goal is to go ahead and try and be as efficient as possible and present plan A every single time. Plan A being the most optimal plan. If there's something that prevents us from implementing plan A, like client doesn't qualify for it, there's some roadblock, client doesn't want it, whatever, we need to have plan B, and we just keep going down the list until we get to something that can be implemented, and we try and be as efficient with it as possible. But we're always looking at, okay, what are the impacts of these various different what if scenarios? And we also need to go ahead and take a look at like, okay, what happens if it doesn't occur? What happens if it does? And like trying to find that right balance. Like most of the time, there is no one, this is the answer. It is, hey, here is optimal given what you've shared with us about your situation. And now let's have a conversation, make sure that like we didn't miss something, leave something out. Like we need to make sure that we have as much of the information as possible and then implement the most effective thing, not knowing exactly what the future is going to bring.
And then that takes us to the estate planning piece. And the estate planning piece is not just when you've passed away, it's also what if you're alive and can't make decisions? Who's going to help you? Who has access to the funds, power of attorneys, health directives, trusts that need to be put in place? This is the legal paperwork that not only takes care of you while you're alive or allows other people to take care of you while you're alive, but also tells people who gets what, when, how, and for how long.
I mean, think of this as like the logistics of it. Like we all have a plan. And now the question becomes, how well was that plan communicated ahead of time? And can we verify that plan? Like the worst case scenarios are when like the plan was communicated and two people heard the same thing and interpreted it massively differently.
Yep.
Now we've got an issue that we're then going to like wind up battling in court, and it's going to get super expensive super quickly. We want to avoid that as much as possible, and having good documentation, having clear conversations with everyone in the room. These are ways to go ahead and prevent or avoid as much of that as humanly possible.
So that's the protection pieces that we dive into. There's other things that we will speak into with clients, but again, these are the worst threats from the standpoint of the income perspective, right? And it allows you to, a threat out there always is, and I should knock on wood here, like a divorce, for example. But if you set up your plan appropriately, right, everything should still be okay. Or more specifically, maybe I should put it this way: how many people get divorced because of money issues? So maybe it takes the possibility of a divorce and it shrinks it.
Right.
So start to add that in. So that's the protection side of stuff. That's number one. Number two is this whole conversation around what we say savings rate versus rate of return. Savings rate is what percentage of your income do you save? Like if you make $100,000 and you save $10,000, your savings rate is 10%.
Yeah.
Right? Now, rate of return, that's the conversation that everyone loves to talk about. It's what the media will get your eyeballs over, whether it's negative or positive, right? Most of the time it's the negative news, but it's still both news.
Well, it's fear and greed, right? Like, and the, the media is always trying to amplify it, whatever direction it's going, because what the media cares about is having eyeballs on the news. And the two ways to do that are fear and greed.
So Alex and I always go into a conversation around, okay, let's talk about savings rate versus rate of return. And I mean, the biggest piece, if there's any takeaway, is how much of your financial plan do you want to rely upon rate of return? And most of the time we get answers like, well, I'd rather not have to have and rely upon 100% of my financial plan being only around rate of return. And where that comes from is this. If we take a look at a 30-year period of time, and we're looking at someone that makes $300,000 a year, okay? And let's just say on average, they get a 4% kind of inflationary bump over that 30-year period of time. When we calculate here, and here's one thing that kind of, I don't want to derail us here, Alex, but we didn't go into this on the protection side of stuff. If this person could save all $300,000 plus that 4% bump every year, that's $16.8 million that's going through their fingertips. Like, that's really what we're wanting to protect, that cash flow that's coming in the door. And it's a huge amount. Like, this person, this isn't even taking into consideration rate of return. This is just like, I took $300,000 from my job,
and I stuffed it under my mattress.
Next year, I got a 4% bump, so I get a little bit over 300,000. Then every year, and let's just pretend we didn't have expenses, which I realize that's not the case in real life. But if we didn't, the fact is this person has $16.8 million on the low end going through their hands.
Right. And that's the way to think about it, is that you're going to receive $16.8 million over the next 30 years. So this would be like a 35-year-old making 300 grand, and working until 65, or a 40-year-old working until 70. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, I only want to work for the next 20 years. So Ryan, change it to, 300 grand over 20 years. And like, let's show what that looks like. So for that person, like, okay, cool. You're still going to have, what is that? 8.9?
Yep.
$8.9 million of cash flow, zero rate of return. Like, you are throwing this under your mattress. You're going to have $8.9 million go through your hands over the next 20 years. And that assumes just cost of living adjustments, no raises, nothing really good happening, like just that much money going through your hands. And like, when we show this to people, most of the time they're in shock over how much money is going to go through their hands during the rest of their working years.
So that takes us to the next point. Okay, so this money's going through your hands. What do we normally do with it? Well, most people have focused on rate of return. And so we always ask them, what is your expectations of rate of return? And they give us whatever number they give us. We normally get somewhere between 6 and 8% rate of return. Okay. And then we say, okay, then are we going to owe taxes? Like, how much of that money are we actually going to keep so that we can get the 8% rate of return on the money?
And oftentimes we get I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to. I'm saving 10% of my money.
So if they're saving 10% of their money, so you can see an annual savings rate of 10% with an 8% rate of return over a 30-year period of time, that's $5.5 million.
That's not too bad.
However, something to consider, and this is what most people don't recognize, the money that they lost could have been worth, in that 8% rate of return, could have been $49-50 million. And we're not suggesting that is actually the case, because you can't save every penny. But they're not understanding how much of the money
you might be able to keep. But they're likely going to give you this nice orange jumpsuit.
Right. Right. So this is that 10%. So does this work out? The answer to this question is maybe, because here's the thing. Life doesn't work on a spreadsheet. This is them saving money, 10%.
Hey, Ryan, I can literally hear the accountants throwing calculators at their screen right now.
Am I wrong? Like, even the accountants that are listening to us.
No,
one of them.
Right.
Like, Mr. and Miss Accountant, Have you ever had to tap into money that you otherwise didn't plan on spending?
Or did you ever get a different rate of return than what you were expecting?
Right, that's with an 8%, never getting a down year, right? This is 8% for 30 straight years. Now, here's what's fun about this. At least we find it fun. So this is at a 10%. Okay. What's the chances that this person actually lands like this? I'd argue it's not high. Like I would say it's less than 50%.
I get that.
This is spreadsheet math. Now, if
Well,
they set up their balance sheet appropriately, then they add, to your point, we're going to talk about that later, the location standpoint, then they add a much higher success. But just from a savings rate of return conversation for today, let's just say we've got twins, Alex. Like you're twin A, I'm twin B. So this is you, Alex. You're thinking you're going to get 8% return. You're going to save 10% of your money for 30 years. Every year you're saving 10%. I'm less riskier than you. I'm going to save 20% of my money, but I'm going to be less riskier. So I'm not going to get as much money I'm not going to plan on as much money in the market. I'm going to pick a number here. I'm going to choose 5. I have no idea what this is going to turn out. We're doing this ad hoc. 5.5 is what Alex is going to get to, relying upon that 8% rate of return. I'm going to put mine into play. I'm at 6.8.
this is my I'm not happy face.
So I went after a 5% rate of return, and I saved 20% of my income every year. Between the two of us, which is more likely to get the number? Alex or me?
Oh, Ryan, you are by a long shot. For one reason, it is way more, you have a lot more control over saving the 20% versus getting the 8% rate of return. So a 5% rate of return is much more attainable, and you have way more control over the ability to go get the 20% savings rate.
And for fun, I dipped it down to 4%. Now it's at 5.8. I still beat you at a 4% rate of return. It's a half the rate of return.
Right.
So, by the way, this is not a conversation around we're saying rate of return is nothing to think about. Yes, it's a part of the plan. However, we've never met anyone that wants to rely upon rate of return only and in retirement rely upon rate of return only.
Well, and the bigger issue, Ryan, is like when we get to retirement, my $300,000 income growing at 4%, where I'm saving 10% of the money, I need to create $900,000 to live on. You only need to create $800,000 to live on. So not only do you have more money and took less risk, but the number of, from a cash flow standpoint, that you're trying to recreate to live the same lifestyle is smaller than mine.
Yep.
So savings rate is this massive double-edged sword, and it works well for you on both sides. Most of the time we talk about double-edged swords being like, there's a good thing and a bad thing. This is, nope, there's a good thing and a good thing. One, you're saving more money, and two, you're spending less money. Those are two good things. So the more that you can control the spending rate, the easier it's going to be to create rate of return or to create cash flow in retirement. And a lot of people are probably thinking, well, okay, guys, it's great to think this way, but you just snapped your fingers and saved an extra 10%. Well, we actually have a way of accomplishing this. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, so Ryan's actually reading my mind and creating this cash flow example. So if what we've got is the same 30-year time period, the same 4%, 5% rate of return, the same $300,000 inflow, with a 4% increase for 30 years. And then we've got lifestyle. No, lifestyle's an outflow. Thank you. And okay, if we're saving 10% to start, it's going to be 270 of outflow. And if we have the exact same inflation rate associated with our lifestyle, well, okay, go ahead and hit recalculate. And this is going to show us one of the things that we're accustomed to. Like, okay, great. We grew to like that $3.5 million number that we calculated earlier. Now,
real quick though, Alex, I want to go down to the details. And I'm not normally the detail guy between the two of us, but I think this is just very powerful to recognize. You already mentioned, here's year 30. This is the year before you're retiring. 935, 595 is your income that year. Your lifestyle was 842,036. What's your savings rate? Is it more or less than 10% or the same 10%?
It is exactly the same 10%.
Exactly the same 10%. Even though your income goes up, if your lifestyle is going up by the same amount, your savings rate will always stay at the same 10%.
Now, the question that we've asked clients, and at this point, we've probably asked about 150 people between the two of us. Hey, Ryan, if your income goes up by 4% next year, and your spending goes up, but it only goes up by 3% instead of 4%, are you even going to notice the difference?
No.
And that is what literally every single person has told us is no or no, I'd never notice that. So change it from 4% down to 3% on the expenses.
And real quick, before we go there, I want to tell everyone, if you're making $300K, 1% of $300K is $3,000, right? On a monthly basis, that's $250. I mean, for me, that's like taking my family out to dinner nowadays. Maybe twice. Am I going to notice taking my family out to dinner 1 or 2 times a month? Is that going to affect my lifestyle drastically? The answer is unequivocally no, and everyone else has said the exact same thing. So that's all we're doing. Rather than our lifestyle going up by the same 4%, we're just increasing it by 3. So it's still increasing. We're not against lifestyle increasing. But how do we get, to Alex's point, how do we get from 10% to 20% as fast as possible? This is the best way to do it because it's easier to track. And so as we hit calculate here, actually, for one, let's just show the difference in asset.
We more than doubled the amount of money that this person is going to have in retirement.
So if they could, and they saved the money and they got that 5% rate of return, now they're at 7.1 million. Now, what does that look like from an asset standpoint, right? The income's still the same. That didn't change. It's still 935, 595. The lifestyle number is dramatically lower, and we've already discussed they wouldn't even feel it. 636, 273. So let's do the math live here, Alex.
It's roughly 30%.
Is it?
It's not exactly. It's roughly.
Yeah. So as you're doing that math there, right? That's a huge increase. I'm actually doing it, Alex, because it's actually going to drive me bonkers if I don't know it. It's 31.9% savings rate.
Yeah. Well, and let's take it one step further, Ryan. In retirement, not only do you have twice the money, we just took this person from spending $842,000 a year
that they'll need in retirement to have the same lifestyle to 636. Sorry,
so that's $200,000. There's a 25% drop in what is required to maintain that same lifestyle. Oh, and we doubled the amount of assets that they would have to be able to create that cash flow. Might this person have a significantly higher chance of success?
Unequivocally, yes.
Like anybody who's like, oh, well, right, but you crushed their lifestyle. Well, okay, you're spending $636,000 a year on lifestyle. I would hope that you're going to enjoy your
It's not
life.
even that. We crushed it by 1%. This is not that big a deal.
Yeah. Well, and like everybody that we've talked to is like, oh, yeah, I'm sure that I'm inadvertently wasting that amount of money simply because it's in my bank account. And as Americans, we're all goldfish. Whatever is in our bank account, that's how much we spend. And so that's the magic secret, the secret sauce, if you will, of let's change how we deal with money from a fundamental logistics standpoint. Like there's nothing super magical about this, but clients do not understand how to do this on their own. It's kind of like the fitness industry. Everybody knows move more, eat less, eat healthier. And yet without trainers and dietitians and nutritionists, etc., we don't do it.
So this is how we go from 10% to 32%, just about, in an easy way. So we kind of went down the rabbit hole. Let's bring us back here, Alex. So we were just talking about savings rate. This is, and by the way, this is that 5% rate of return conversation. So now that we're understanding savings rate being more important than rate of return, now let's talk about location of our money, where we're putting our money. And so specifically, as we've already said, when we're saving money to turn on an income stream later on, it's the whole reason we're saving money.
Yeah.
And what do we want? Do we want the lowest possible net after-tax income stream or the highest possible net after-tax income stream?
100% of my clients have said the second. They want the highest possible net after-tax cash flow.
So if that's the case, let's look at how people save money or how we often see it. So in this case, we're showing this person had $900,000 in a traditional 401k, $100,000 in savings, $500,000 in standard investments, and they had $47,000 in Roth. Where they were saving money is $47,000. They're maxing out both their traditional 401ks. They were putting $12,000 a year into savings. Let's just call it what it is. They were probably spending that money on vacations. Fine, no big deal.
We'll give them credit for it.
Sure. $24,000 was going to investments and nothing was going to Roth. If we were to build a pie chart of their assets, the $900,000 in retirement money, $100,000 in savings, and $500,000 in investments, and $47,000 in Roth retirement money. If we were to build a pie chart, red being all of that money is fully taxable when you take it out, yellow money being partially taxable, and green being tax-free or non-taxable when you take it out, how much of your pie chart would you want to be red versus yellow versus green? And I realize as I'm saying this, and our listeners are hearing this, and most people are going to say, well, I'd rather have it be green. And as we start down here, you can see that this client, more than 50% of their asset is fully taxable, 58%. The good news is they've got 38%, almost 39% in partially taxable, and they've got 3% in tax-free. Now, here's the kicker. What does this pie chart look like when they're 65? And you can see it got worse. Now 60% of their pie chart is red, 37 is yellow, and now we're down to 2% in the green. Again, these are the buckets of money that they're going to be pulling from. The vast majority of their assets is in the red. So a lot of the income they're going to pull from is going to be taxable.
When unfortunately, we don't have the ability to change much of the taxation on the dollars that are coming out of the red. Where we have the ability to go ahead and use different distribution strategies is on the money that's in the yellow. Now, like there's ways that we can go ahead and create more or less cash flow with the red and the green. And we want to use cash flow strategies that create as much possible cash flow out of the green as possible. But where we can really have the most impact is on that yellow piece. And in an ideal world, like everyone's probably going, oh, well, we need more green. Yes. But at the same time, we also do need to keep balance. So in an ideal world, we wind up with a ton of green early on, building red as we get closer to retirement and we're at our peak income. And then in retirement, we have balance between red, yellow, and green. And it looks something like what Ryan just created. And this allows us to create optimal distribution strategies from the yellow. We intentionally try and spend down the red because not only is it terrible to create income off of, it's even worse to go ahead and pass it on to the next generation and have them inherit the tax bomb. Because when you're creating the tax bomb for yourself, you've got time on your side. Thanks to some new legislation, when we go ahead and hand that tax bomb off to the next generation, it goes off a lot quicker. It goes off in 10 years. And so we need to make sure that we're careful with what we wind up doing from inherited assets standpoint. And we really don't want to pass on red assets if we can avoid it.
So again, location of your money for turning on income streams, as well as just liquidity in general, meaning we already alluded to this. When we've got money sitting on the balance sheet that isn't correlated with the market, that's money that we might need to touch in some event, either good or bad. But that also allows us to not touch the money that we've invested. And everyone knows that rule. The best rule is don't touch the money that's invested. Yet how many people actually stick to that rule 100% of the time? It's very difficult to, given how life is. So you have to set up your balance sheet in real life scenario, not spreadsheet scenario.
Well, and like what you were talking about there, Ryan, is not only not touch the money that's invested, but really, really, really don't touch it when it's down. When the market's down, we don't want to pull money out of the market. And when we get that's easy advice to give during the accumulation phase when we're building our wealth. And it's much easier to accomplish when we're building our wealth. When we're in retirement and we no longer have a paycheck, we have to pull money. It has to come from somewhere. And if we don't have assets that are outside of the market, that are non-correlated, that aren't down when the market's down, then we're pulling money out in a down market. And that not only impacts us negatively from pulling money out, but also negatively impacts us from pulling money out at a bad time.
So that's the location of our money. That's part 3. The last thing is, and we actually recorded an episode on a level of this. It's episode 306 on whether or not to pay your mortgage off or not when you enter retirement. And so this is about lifestyle, meaning the debts that we have or are accumulating. The question is the money that's coming in the door or the assets that we've accumulated, should we pay off the debt as we get into retirement? And definitely check out that episode, because the common question we always get is like, hey, Ryan, Alex, should I overpay on the mortgage either throughout our working years or just pay off the mortgage as I get into retirement? And our conversation is always around, well, it depends on the risk that you want to take. And it also depends on what the interest rate is on the debt.
Well, and where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
So like one of the things that I've had clients ask me a bunch is like, hey, Alex, should I pull a bunch of money out of my retirement account to pay off my debt? And the answer is almost always no, because you're going to wind up bumping yourself up into higher and higher tax brackets when you do that, and you're going to take an incrementally larger hit. And so when we're doing this type of analysis, and Ryan and I really, specifically me, really enjoy doing this type of analysis, what we need to do is take a look at like, okay, well, if the money stays on the balance sheet, what does it do? If the money goes off the balance sheet, what does that look like? And we can actually put it into a test environment and look at like, okay, hey, if the markets go well, here's what it looks like. If the markets go bad, here's what it looks like. And we can start doing some comparative analysis on macroeconomics and look at like, hey, is this a good thing to pay it off? Yes, no, maybe. Like the maybe is like, well, under this scenario, it's good. And under this scenario, it's bad. And then we just have to figure out like, okay, which one of those scenarios is more likely? But if the answer is, well, it's beneficial to keep the assets on the balance sheet, well, then we should do that. If it's beneficial to pay off the debt, then we should do that. And so like going through this comparative analysis is one of the things that like our clients love when we go ahead and show them, and it starts making these decisions much, much, much easier to make and understand not only the should I, but the why behind it.
And for those of you either listening in your car or you're watching us on YouTube here, right? If you're listening to this and you're wondering, okay, what can I do today to better my situation financially? We've gone through 4 different pieces, right? A, protect your income. If that goes away, I'm not sure what else you're going to do, right? So we got to make sure you're protecting the income, and we've gone through what items to look at in terms of protecting that income. The second thing is make sure we have a focus on savings rate. I'm not saying to ignore rate of return, but I am saying to make sure that you're not relying upon rate of return to make or break you. Like the beginning of this year, Alex and I were extremely overwhelmed with new clients because they had thought about retiring in the next year or two, and now they were questioning it. And the reason they were doing that is they set themselves up for rate of return to either have them retire or not retire. 3, location. Where are you putting your dollars from the standpoint of taxation, from the standpoint of risk, right? And building in that flexibility for real life, not spreadsheet life. And then last but not least, debts. How do you attack debts, and should you attack the debts based on that? So those are the 4 areas to really focus on. We hope this episode is valuable. I know it was a little bit longer, but we get questions around prioritizing and how to do it. These are the areas to prioritize. And if you do this, you're going to set yourself up really, really well.
And if you have questions on how to do this or any of the topics that we talked about, reach out to us over at beerandmoney.net.
Beerandmoney.net, top of the page, there's a contact us that will reach out to us. Or there's also a link in the show notes here. Click on that link. That will take you to Build Out, and you can actually get your own financial scorecard. We don't get access to it, just so we're clear. It's its own site. You get your own financial scorecard, and that will give you some tips as well for your own financial plan.
Now, if you want us to look at it, there is an option in there for you to click share.
Yep. So we hope this episode was valuable for you. Mr. Collins.
Cheers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Quantified Financial Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. This material is intended for general public use. By providing this content, Park Avenue Securities, LLC is not undertaking to provide investment advice or a recommendation for any specific individual or situation, or to otherwise act in a fiduciary capacity. Please contact a financial representative for guidance and information that is specific to your individual situation. Ryan and Alex are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC. OSJ 200 Market Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon 97201. Phone number 503-221-1226. Securities products and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Quantified Financial Partners is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Ryan Burklo, CA Insurance License Number 0K24924. Alexander Collins, CA Insurance License Number 0H24806.
813156.8.1. Expiration July 2027.